So going through this kind of loss is not something you're ever going to be over. The stages of grief had nothing to do with you having close personal loss. Stages of grief had to do with, if you have a terminal diagnosis, you processing your own mortality to the point of acceptance that you're going to die. It is not. So do not let people tell you you're going to go through the stages of grief after you lose a spouse or a child, for example. That is not the same. It is not true. You don't ever get over it.
Okay, so you have a testimony that is a heavy one, I think.
It is.
I've never been a parent, never had children. And if I did, this would be a really hard one for, I think, anybody to process.
Right.
And to walk through. You lost your son.
I did.
Can you tell me his name and tell me about him?
Joshua David Landry.
Okay.
Yeah. He was a real jerk.
No, he wasn't.
No, he was not. He was a really, really good kid. Young firefighter.
Okay.
And he had gone through his first fire season up in Montana and done great. Graduated the top of his class, and he came home for COVID because they kind of closed down training and all that. He had done a lot of active firefighting, Arizona, out in California, and things like that. And they sent him home because COVID.
Okay.
He was home cherry picking all the job offers. In fact, right before everything happened, he had just finally settled on the one he wanted, and he accepted a job with Bureau of Land Management as a federal firefighter. He was super excited about that. Okay. And he was due to ship out in 4 days. So this was May 20 of 2020 when it all happened.
2020, mm-hmm. Okay.
But
good kid? Was he a good kid?
He was a really, really good kid. Yeah.
Were you close with him?
So here's where I'm going to get deep with you a little bit. Okay. Went through a divorce with his mom.
Okay.
And up until 2009, my son and I we really had this dream father-son thing. Because he was my third. And I felt like I was going to do everything right with him. Not that I was an awful dad with my other two, because they're great kids too. But with Josh, I really wanted to make sure I hit it on all cylinders. So I felt like I was doing everything right. I was a deacon in the church. I was on the praise team and active in, my faith. And with him, I had him with me doing everything. Little things, like he'd come home from school. We had a little park right across the street from where we lived in Stetson Hills here in the Springs. So, most often I'd grab your ball and glove and let's just go across and toss the ball a few times, and little things like that. Bedtime every night, it was Dr. Seuss. He curled up with his head in my chest, and I read him Dr. Seuss every night. We prayed together. And
it's okay.
I put him to bed, that was every night. I had the privilege of putting my beautiful boy to bed, and it was just our routine. Every morning he got up and he made a beeline. I was always sitting there drinking my coffee, probably reading the paper, and he would make a beeline for my lap. Sometimes it was for 3.5 seconds, but he just had to dive into my lap, put his head on my chest, and then run and get his breakfast. So I had a beautiful relationship with him. And
how old was he in 2019? 2020. How old is he?
So he died when he was 20.
Okay.
Yeah, the 20s. He died at 20 in 20 of 2020.
Okay, so but from the time that he was born till the time that he went home, mm-hmm. You would say you had a really good relationship with him?
Well, that's kind of where I want to get at, because everything really fell apart bad because I left his mom.
Okay.
And that's another whole story. Yeah. I left his mom.
Okay.
Not proud of it. Things happened. But bottom line, he obviously felt like I betrayed him, this perfect family. From his perspective, we had a perfect family. And all he could see was I destroyed that.
How old was he when you left his mother?
So it was 2009, so higher math for me. So that would have put him at 9 years old.
Okay. Which is pretty young.
Really hard. Yeah, my other two took it much better, because they were a lot older.
Yeah. My
oldest son's going to be 35 this year, and my middle son's 31. I know, I look that age.
No, you don't look like you could have kids though.
Oh, you're kind. Thank you for that.
Okay, so he was your youngest then?
He was my baby.
Okay.
But because he was small and because his family, he had the perfect American family, mom, dad, church, family, everything was just perfect for him. And then from his perspective, I just snatched it away. And I do bear responsibility for that. But he didn't have the capacity to process everything as an adult would. And because of that, it fractured our relationship in a very, very devastating way. He was polite to me, but he no longer called me dad. It was father.
And what year did that start? Like, how old
right
was
away.
he? Oh, so from the
right
age
away.
of 9.
Right away.
Oh, yeah. When your relationship really... Okay.
Yeah, and there were dynamics that I won't get into that were not helpful, but I'll just say that that relationship suffered greatly. And Linda told me for years that if I was just patient and I took the high road and I only ever focused on him, and I never once went to him and said, Josh, you need to understand things from my perspective. I never did any of that.
Is Linda his birth mother?
No.
Oh, who's Linda?
My wife.
Oh, your current wife.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Put the pieces together. So Liz, who I have a great relationship with now.
Okay.
I could call her now. We could talk for an hour. She's an amazing woman and a great mother.
Okay.
But Linda, my current wife, said that just be patient. Take the high road. Yeah. Always focus on him, his life, what's important to him. Don't ever feel like you need to go and try to explain things or rationalize or justify. Just be a great dad for him.
Good advice.
And I did. It was great advice. I was impatient, but I did just what she suggested and just what she advised. And it took a long time. And he really started to come back around the last couple of years before he died. Gradual improvement over years. It wasn't always bad. The first 2, 3, 4 years were really bad. He would show up, be very cold. I'd try to take a picture with him. He would intentionally grimace, just not give me a happy face. He never wanted me to see him happy or never wanted to invite me to be a part of anything he was doing.
Which must have been painful as
It was agonizing.
But you know what? I'm a child of divorce, and I remember that at the time, I felt like I kind of took sides too, though.
Yeah.
And I think you don't have the emotional bandwidth
That's
or
right.
the maturity to understand and process that anyway. So
very true, especially for boys.
Him for that.
Oh, God. Oh, yes. And that's going to come out in this whole story.
Yeah.
The level of reconciliation and forgiveness was God level.
God.
Major God level. It was incredible how things transpired at the end. And if I had to lose him, everything that transpired up until that day was perfect.
Really?
The way it came back around. I don't want to jump ahead.
No,
but
let's jump
we'll
ahead.
definitely get to that.
So he was working for the National Forest Service.
He was actually working for the Seeley Lake Fire District. He was assigned to the Seeley Lake Fire District in Montana. And he had done 1 year up there. And in the military, we call it TDY, temporary duty, but he was sent to Nevada and California to fight actual forest fires. And he had several fires under his belt. And then he was still in training technically, but he was actually assigned to that ranger station, so fighting actual fires.
So he was going to be a firefighter.
He was actually he was a certified firefighter
Okay.
at the end.
Awesome.
Yeah, he was. And he was accepted as he was going to be on an engine crew for a wildland firefighting crew in Montana as a federal firefighter.
Okay.
Yeah. So things gradually got better for Josh and I, but there was still this little bit of a cold separation. But as the years went on, he became a little bit more easygoing, a little bit more chill. Mm-hmm. He had fun. He allowed himself to laugh with me and Linda a little bit. He wanted to hate and resent Linda. She was the reason I could never go back to his mom. That was the way he processed it. And there's some truth in there, but that's another story altogether. Yeah. So as the last couple of years, and Linda always said, as soon as he moves away from home and gets away from being, living with his mom and all that, he's going to see the world very differently. He's going to go with other men and be in training, and he's going to see people that come from actual really bad backgrounds, abusive fathers and all kinds of nasty, horrible things that happen. And he's going to realize, wow, maybe it wasn't that bad. After all, I didn't have it so terrible.
Kids need that.
They do need that. Yeah. A little perspective, a little seeing the world with your own eyes and not filtered through how your parents want you to see the world. Really changes your perspective. So those last couple of years, he started gradually, he would just call me, which was, oh my God, I would see.
Yeah, you get
emotional. I see my son's name come up on my phone. I'm like, yeah. And that's how the last couple of years were. And then it became more and more of a regular thing. He would call me and just check in for no other reason, but just to call me and check in.
That's awesome.
And what an amazing,
happy that you had that.
Oh my God. And he came home in those last few weeks, something clicked in his head. And I don't know if his soul knew he was going to depart, but something happened in there where he went into overdrive, making everything amazing between us. And he and Linda. So we were kind of locked in, right? COVID.
Yeah.
Maybe you've heard of that. There was this thing called COVID. Anyway, another story. But we had time together in the home, and I had all these projects because I'm a project guy. I don't have anything else to do, so I'm getting rock delivered, and we're going to pick up landscaping timbers and railroad timbers and things like that, and doing all these projects around the house. And he's working with me, and we're doing that stuff. And he's just loving being with me. And I find myself going to the store and buying a shirt. Then the next day, he'd want to go and buy a shirt just like it. He's wearing his hair like I was wearing my hair, and all of a sudden, he wanted to be exactly like his dad. And I just like.
Huge compliment.
It came back around. The 9-year-old that was like this with me, all of a sudden I had him back. He wanted to be with dad, wanted to be like dad. And we talked about such deep, deep things, spirituality and life and relationships and what's most important in life. He would go out and do things with a girl he was dating in Denver, Cassie, if you see this, love you. And he would come home after spending a whole day with her, and Linda and I would be doing something. It would be typically our little bottle of wine sitting in the backyard during the summer, because that's what we always did in the summer. And wherever we were, he'd come find us. And he wouldn't just say, hey. He came and sat. He came and sat, and we would talk for hours.
Okay.
And not just stupid, goofy stuff, and just deep. We'd laugh, and we'd joke, and we would talk about deep things. And I'm going to grab that tissue. Thanks for doing that. How's this for manhood? See, I don't mind crying in front of people.
Real men cry.
That's right, real men cry.
So it's safe to say that the last few years before he left, you had a relationship with him that you wanted. Like, it was
the perfect relationship.
The perfect
It
relationship.
became perfect. So again, that quality relationship, it came to the point where we just talked about everything, and he couldn't wait to spend time with me. I had my little gym at home because we couldn't go to real gym. So I had a makeshift gym in the basement. And I'll just never forget, I'm there working out, and the Josh that I would have known, 9-10 years prior to that would have just been like, walk by, Dad, hey father, walk by. I mean, he would never, ever, ever cross a room without stopping and talking to me.
Okay.
So he would get up later than me because I'm a crazy early riser. So he'd get up like 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And he wouldn't just, because he had to round the staircase, which is right where my little gym was.
Yeah.
And he would just stop, lean up against the wall, and we would just start talking. He didn't have an agenda. He didn't want to ask me for anything. Yeah. He lived with us for the last 7 weeks of his life.
Okay.
And I just remember those precious moments. Yeah. He was excited to just like talk to dad. He just had this yearning desire to make up for lost time. He knew he needed to reconcile, wanted that relationship with me. And I just was like, wow.
Was his personality like yours?
Yes. Gregarious, outgoing, fun. Oh, yeah.
So when you looked at him as your son, you saw a lot of yourself in him.
Here I am again.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yep.
If you didn't cry, I'd think there's something wrong with you.
Oh, there is something wrong with me. That's another topic.
Isn't
that the truth?
So, do you want to take me to 2020 now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was, the last, the things I was talking about. There was 2020 because those were the weeks he was living with us, those last few weeks of his life. And everything was perfect. So the day before it happened, for example, just to kind of typify the way our relationship evolved and how things kind of panned out at the end, he spent the day with Cassie, got home probably 9:30 at night, and I'm doing my normal routine, sitting there watching Fox News and, just chilling out in my easy chair. I think Linda was upstairs. She'd gone to bed early or something. And Josh came in, always as always, found me, sat on the couch. And I'm so glad I wasn't the dad I would have been maybe, in my younger days where I would have been like kind of polite, like, oh, hey, well, I'm trying to watch this, so let me get back to my show. I paused it when he walked in the room, and I'll never forget. And he sat across, and we just kind of looked at each other like this, and we were just talking. And I realized, we're going to talk. So I just turned the TV off.
Good move,
and we talked for like an hour and a half. I mean, I was pretty close to wanting to go to bed. But the level of engagement and the way that we talked was so revitalizing. It was so filled my lungs full of fresh air. It just created this energy that was intoxicating in the most beautiful way.
Wow, what did you guys talk about?
Everything.
Was it just little
Everything. Oh, no big stuff. Deep. Because he was dating Cassie and he was head over heels.
Was he?
She would have been my daughter-in-law.
Yeah. Did he love the Lord? He loved Jesus?
He did. He had a very unique spirituality. He was baptized. He was a Christian. We went to Christian churches all his life.
Okay.
And obviously he had a little bit of a falling out after everything. Not with the Lord, but he didn't go to church. But he was a believer.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
But he wasn't practicing. He wasn't going to church. But he had a very evolved spiritual sensibility. No, of course not. I don't believe that for 1 minute. The religiosity and all that. Again, another show, perhaps. But no, people want to be religious and miss faith.
Yes, absolutely.
But he had deep faith. He had just a deep understanding of nature and being whole and being happy and being a good person. And those are the things we talked about. We really talked about the deeper issues of life. What does it mean to be a real man?
Wow.
And,
at
what is
20 he's
at
talking?
20? Oh yeah, he was deep.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some
He
depths to
was
this boy.
deep. He was an old soul. I always like to say that. Yeah. So that night he came in and we talked and we covered the gamut as always about just deep issues, relationships, and what's important in life. And he really had a notion that he wanted to just kind of be. He was torn because he was really taken with Cassie, but he also wanted to be single for a while. He talked about, because the fire season is pretty busy, but then on the off season, they have a lot of downtime. So he actually talked about, if he didn't take his federal job, if he'd had a normal wildland firefighting job, it's seasonal.
Okay.
And he was going to just go to Europe, work ski resorts in Europe, or work a cruise ship and do things like that. And I'm like, yes, do that, son. That's the kind of stuff that he couldn't really have. That's where the conversations came. He's like, oh my God, I want to do that, but now there's Cassie, So, but I thought, but we had these conversations before Cassie came into the picture, and I was excited for him because those are the things I think we all probably wish we had done when we were young adults. Let's just
I wish I could have talked
be
to my dad
single
about it.
and just go and live for a bit and go work on a cruise ship, go hang out in Europe, travel if you can, do that, and then go settle into a job and find the love of your life and have kids and do that, but don't rush it.
I think it's good
Live a
advice
bit.
as a parent.
Absolutely. But he was excited about that, so we had really intense conversations about those things.
That's good.
And then, like I said, Cassie came into the picture, and he was all like, but now there's Cassie. So, and then that went to bed that night late. I think it was probably midnight by the time we finished our conversation and went to bed. And then, so this is the hard part. Next day, get up, normal day. My son had just purchased, my middle son, Richard, had just purchased a house in Cottonwood Park over here in Colorado Springs. So I'd been helping him set up his garage and putting up the old Tim Allen, the Toolman Taylor, for those of you who remember that, putting up the pegboard. And Josh had come over and helped quite a bit. So I was getting ready to go over and help Richard finish his garage up. So this was 4:00 in the afternoon. It's amazing when things happen, how clear you are on the times. 4:00 in the afternoon.
Stamps, yeah.
Oh yeah, just embedded. We all knew where we were on 9/11. We all know those moments in life. 4:00. I went downstairs, and Josh was sitting there watching one of his goofy anime things. He liked his anime cartoons. He was just sitting downstairs. Yeah, he was just watching those stupid Japanese anime things he loved. And because we had such a beautiful respect, as soon as I went downstairs, hey, Josh, and he paused it, got up at the edge of his couch. Yeah, Dad. And I just said, hey, buddy, I'm getting ready to go over. And I actually went over and sat on the love seat across from him, and just for a quick second, hey, I'm getting ready to go over to your brother's house and help him finish his garage up. And he goes, oh, Dad, I'm sorry. Told Mom I would come over for dinner. And he really hadn't had an opportunity to do that with everything that had been going on. And I was grateful that he was going to have that chance.
Yeah.
To talk about.
This was his biological mother that he was going to go have dinner with.
Liz.
Okay.
Yeah, again, great lady.
Here in Colorado
Springs. Yeah, she lives out here in Callahan. And he just said, I can't. I'd love to, Dad, but I promised Mom I'd come out. He said, I'm getting ready to wrap this. I'm going to finish watching the last few minutes of this, and then I'm going out to see Mom and have dinner. Huh. And then I left and went to Richard's house and hanging pegboards in the garage. We went to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever and got some stuff and got back about 5:30 to Richard's house. We're working in his garage, and it was about 5:45. I get a call from Gareth, my oldest son. He's like, Dad, where's Josh? I said, oh, he was at his mom's house having dinner. He goes, no, I'm here. He's not. I'm like, did you call him? He said, yeah, we've been calling and texting and he's not answering. I'm like, that's not Josh. He does not ignore calls.
Is he close with his brothers?
Yeah, they had typical brother relationship.
Okay.
You know, he was the older brother and they did have this beautiful dynamic.
So it's atypical of him not to respond.
Very atypical. Yeah, they never would ignore each other. I mean, they don't do that. And so his mom was calling and texting, and then I'm standing there with Richard, and I looked over at Richard. I said, Richard, call your brother. So Richard starts calling and texting. And then I heard Liz in the background saying, there was an accident on Highway 24. I know it was Josh. And my first thought was, oh my God, woman, you are so negative. Why would you assume that? That was my first thought. Richard, being a savvy tech guy, he immediately went to his computer, pulled it up, and I want to thank you, news network that I will not mention. That's how I found out about my son's death, because they couldn't freaking wait to put that out there. Driver of a Hyundai Elantra killed on site. That is how I found out. On the freaking news, couldn't wait.
What do you mean they couldn't?
They couldn't wait to express this. A driver died, what he was driving. So I knew because of the news network I shall not mention, even though I'm tempted to.
Yeah.
They called it out. So I found out from the news before I could find out any other way. That's how I knew my son was killed. Because the news couldn't wait to put it out there. And that I've not really seen them do that since. Now they'll wait. If there's an accident, they might say vehicles involved, something like that, a truck and a car. But they said specifically Hyundai of a blue, owner of a driver of a blue Hyundai Elantra killed on site.
So you're sitting in front of the computer with Richard, and that's how you find out.
Well, I was still putting the pegboard up with a shaky hand. Because I'm like, okay, everything's fine. He's going to call back real soon. He got tied up talking to a friend. Something happened, he's fine. And then Richard came upstairs because his office was downstairs, and he said, Dad, come here. And I put the cordless drill down and went downstairs, and he said, look, I said, just read it to me. He read it to me, and that's exactly what it said. Fatal crash, Highway 24. Driver of the blue Hyundai Elantra was killed on site. That's how I found out my son was killed.
That's a really horrible moment for you and Richard.
Ha! Yeah. Yeah, it was obviously the worst day of my life. And it's funny, not funny, but you know what I mean? You see the Hollywood depictions of how you're supposed to act when you get really bad news. You get awful, the knock at the door, the phone call, the mother breaks down crying, sobbing, beating the floor.
Yeah.
That's just not my experience, because you are this isn't real. Shock's a real thing.
Did you immediately go into shock?
I think so. You don't grieve all of a sudden. You don't just start crying. It doesn't work. It didn't for me. And the more people I've spoken with since, I think it's pretty common that your initial reaction isn't the Hollywood reaction.
Yeah.
You don't break down and start crying because it's such an overwhelming thought. It can't be real. You can't possibly process the enormity of something so awful just like that to the point where you realize you have to break down and cry because you just lost someone that close. Your brain can't do that.
It's too much shock.
Yeah,
right?
you can't. It's not even possible.
Yeah.
So I remember so clearly going back and forth. Richard went back in the house, and I was like, I started walking towards my truck, and then I stopped, and I started walking back towards the garage, and then I kind of stopped and turned, and then started walking back towards my truck, and I gotta go to my son, and then where am I gonna go? And then I gotta talk to Richard first. My head was so scrambled.
Yeah.
And then I remember my tiny little petite daughter-in-law, 110 pounds soaking wet, sweet little thing.
This is Josh's girlfriend?
Josh's wife. No, this is my son's wife, Richard's wife. Yeah. And I just remember she came out of the house, and with the poise of someone who's lived a lot more than she had, just looked at me and said, come here. And she pulled me in and centered me just for that moment. Love you, Kat.
Wow, what a great daughter-in-law.
And she's had a lot of loss. My son.
Before this happened, she's had loss?
Yeah, she's gone through a lot as well. I mean, her boyfriend killed himself, and it was a former boyfriend who was Richard's best friend, and it was a whole nother story.
She
So
understood.
she had clarity of mind, poise, and she was able to ground this old man. And in a moment, I really needed that.
What was
And it didn't.
Richard doing? That's his brother.
He was looking shocked, dazed, obviously, and I didn't know what to do. I just knew I had to go to him. I didn't know what that was going to do, you know. So we got in the truck and just started driving that way. I got on the phone.
No.
Yeah, I didn't know what else to do. I mean, I knew I needed to go to him. So we got in the truck and started driving that direction. I got on the phone with Gareth, my son, my oldest, and I said, Gareth, I need you to go out there because you're closer. I need you to go.
You don't like call the cops?
There was already responders.
Okay.
Yeah, because this was already on the news. I mean, there was already first responders on scene,
Okay.
and the roads were already cordoned off and all that. So, yeah, we just started driving out there, and I feel terrible because I actually had my oldest son. I didn't know what to do. I'm out of my mind. I said, Gareth, one of us has to get there. You're the closest. I can't ask your mom to go out there. Could you please drive out there, verify, see what happens?
Why you physically wanted to see that?
I didn't want to see him dead. I needed to go to him.
Yeah.
I just wasn't even willing to accept he was actually gone. This has to be a mistake. Maybe it was the other driver. All this stuff. Maybe he's actually in the hospital. Maybe it's a bad report.
Yeah, you were going to trust the news.
I knew I had to get to him. Okay. I had to go to him. That's all I knew.
Okay.
And again, you're not in the most thoughtful, logical, thought processing state of mind when something like that happens. You're really out of your mind in many ways.
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I can relate to the crazy how your brain just isn't processed.
That's right. When awful things happen, your brain doesn't work the same. So I just drove that direction. But I asked Gareth, I said, please jump in your car, go out there. And so he was the first one on scene. And he couldn't go all the way up to the car because the cop stopped him.
Sure.
But he came up from the backside from Callahan, so we got a lot closer. And he could see the car in the ditch. And he found it first. And my brother, Gareth said, that's my brother. And the cop said, well, I need you to, did he have a tattoo of this or that? And I said, yeah, it was him. So Gareth found out first on scene.
So he was still at the car when...
He was still in the car when Gareth got there.
What happened?
We don't know for sure. We can speculate. Josh was an excellent driver and never even had a ticket. Very safe. In fact, when I was driving, I would do something. Dad, you always told me not to do that. You know, I'm like, just do what I tell you, not what I do.
But was there another car involved?
So he was a head-on collision.
Oh.
So what we think happened is right where this happened, there was a passing lane, and the passing lane was on the right, and that lane ended. So what we think is somebody was to his right and kind of cat and mousing, speeding up, slowing down, something like that, and caused him to overreact, and pull to the other lane and hit head on. But we don't know for sure.
Was the other driver there?
There was 4 kids in the other vehicle, and thank God all of them survived. The driver was very seriously hurt, and he was medevaced out. But they all survived.
Okay.
But all they saw is they're driving, oh, look at the mountains. Because I talked to this family, beautiful Christian family, prayed with them after it happened. They checked in with me a few times, wonderful people. And
so did he say what happened? Does he remember?
The kid driving said, all I know is I looked up, and there he was, and we hit. The kid didn't have a chance. I say kid, he was like 18. Didn't have a chance to like look around, see what else. There was another car passing, so they couldn't. There. He was just all of a sudden. And by all indications, Josh was killed instantly. It was just traumatic impact. And his car rolled into the ditch. And first people that came on the scene didn't even know there was a car in the ditch. They just saw the one car.
And the other driver wasn't even injured?
No, the driver of the other head-on was critically injured.
That was the 18-year-old?
Yeah, I think he was about 18. Yeah, he was injured badly. He had to be medevaced out. The other 3 were injured, but not nearly as bad. So if I'm grateful for anything, I'm so grateful that family did not lose. Those families, they were all Christian kids, and they were strong believers, and they all survived. And I'm just so thankful for that.
I love that you say that, because I think it's something when tragedy happens that we don't realize how much having our faith is going to get us through that. I recently met a woman at a garage sale who lost her husband. He was hit by a truck on his motorcycle.
Oh, God.
And I just said, do you know where he is? And she goes, well, what do you mean? And in that moment, I realized she didn't have God in her life.
Yeah.
He didn't have God. Because when she said, what do you mean where he went? I said, well, we're all either going to heaven or hell.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. It's one or the other.
Right.
And she's like, well, of course he's in heaven. He was a good man. And I didn't feel like I had a platform to say anything. I just gave her a hug.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's definitely the wrong time to
I just prayed
to
for
broach
her
that.
when I left.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
how wonderful that you too have your faith.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the whole cloud of all of this that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are trying to process all this with your ex-wife,
Yeah.
your current wife, your children, because you had 3 boys, right?
Yep.
There isn't a daughter in there though.
No.
Okay. You're processing all of this. And is there ever a part where your heart immediately goes to God? You're like, God, why? What are you doing? Why? How much are you talking to him?
Daily. I have an active prayer life for sure. I went through a crisis of faith going through my divorce, and it was on a next level. Extreme betrayal from my Christian community. Maybe that's another whole podcast. Maybe that's another whole episode. It was awful. That being said, I could not stand you if you told me you were a Christian for a while. For a while. Okay. Not that I would show you. That would be disrespectful.
What was that about?
Should I go into that? I'll tell you a little bit.
Maybe 1 or 2 sentences.
Sure. So I had a pastor that thought it was appropriate after I went to him, volunteered everything that happened, explained that left Liz, I'm now having technically an affair. I'm living apart.
Okay.
And I have an apartment, and I'm not living with that person, but I have my own apartment. I'm carrying on with someone else. And I resigned from all my ministries as soon as everything happened. I went to him right away, resigned. This is going on. Liz and I aren't doing good. And I was not an angel, did not do things well, but I still was honest about it. I came forward and told him. And so months went by. He called my ex-wife and I, then still wife, to his office, and I respectfully went, even though neither of us had attended that church for some time, a few months. And he offered to help, and I graciously accepted. He said, you know what the word says. You're supposed to go back to your wife, all that. Everything was perfect then. Months go by. I'm really truncating this. I didn't fix things quick enough. He then called me to lunch with who used to be a really good friend of mine. He's not a friend. I just haven't associated with him. He was a fellow board member, and said, I'm going to have to do, he brought me to lunch, famous Dave's, I'll never forget, when it was on Kelly Johnson. And he said, I'm going to have to do some things. I'm not asking for your permission. He said, but I've been silent long enough. So I'm a trusting person. I thought he meant if anyone asks what's going on, he's just going to be honest and tell them. And I said, I respect that. I respect you and whatever you have to do. So this was on a Friday. Sunday, he stands up on the pulpit, sizable church in this town, and says, keep the Landry family in prayer. Bob's having an affair. Sunday morning. Oh, by the way, potluck tonight at 6.
No.
Yes.
That was terrible.
It was awful. And I could tell you some backstory, things that happened with that church and that family.
You don't like lay someone's sin out in front of a church service.
Well, here's the deal. I was not living at home, having an affair, and in ministry, nor was I even going to that church. Everything was open. Everybody knew what was going on. I resigned in time. So all of that happened.
But all that aside, you became bitter about Christians because did you just not trust Christians?
I could never have imagined being more hurt. Because my faith, my Christianity, everything was church for me back then. I was on the praise team. I ran men's ministries. I did home groups. I was a deacon. I did it all. And I'll never again get that involved. I'm in a great church now, and I've healed a lot since then. But I went a good 10 years after that. Never would have darkened the doors of a church again. And if I met someone I thought was a little too Christian-y or churchy, I'd be polite, but I would not want to be around you. because you disgusted me. And I mean, you know what I mean? I'm talking, that was my mentality back then. That was my mindset.
It's okay.
It's honest. That's right. So
you're not really tapping into God, what's going on after you lost your son?
no, I'd come a long way of healing by then.
Okay.
And I definitely gained my faith back. Never lost my faith, but I hated church. I hated being around Christians. People that went to church, it's not a logically processed thing, and because I had so many people come out of the woodwork after that happened to me saying, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to you. Let me tell you my story.
Yeah.
There's so many stories of broken people out there who have been victimized by the faith community.
Right.
And it's awful. And these people think they're doing God's work. They don't realize the damage. You know, my oldest son will never darken the doors of a church again. Hates Christianity.
But you know what? I do think we're living in a time where the church is not being who the church needs to be.
Yeah.
Like, we're very desperate for someone to love us through, give us grace.
That's right.
Be honest, be transparent, talk about the times that we're living in.
And I go to a church that has that, and I'm so proud of that.
Good.
Discovery Church, Colorado. I don't know if I can plug that or not, but it is the most amazing church. Because our pastor, I just can't believe how beautifully he articulates this. How about we don't show up like asses on, Sunday brunch after church?
Yeah.
Not tip and leave a freaking track. How about we don't go around preaching to people, turn or burn? Nobody ever came to the Lord with that.
Yeah.
How about we just show the love?
Yeah.
And make a community that is exciting and awesome and fun, that people, wow, I actually do want to be a part of that. And not make a community it's like, well, if you don't walk like us, dress like us, talk like us, we're going to tell you we want you there, but we're really going to make you feel like we don't, because we really don't.
But Bob, that's what Scripture says, and I just sent it to a friend yesterday. How will they know us, non-believers? By how we love one another.
That's exactly right.
So if we're not displaying that, then how do we open our mouth and say, oh, but come to the Lord?
Yeah.
Even though I'm not loving you.
Ding, ding.
I'm not giving you any mercy or grace, but come to Jesus.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Like, no, we've got to be doers of the word.
That's right.
Not just hearing the word.
And that's where I'm going to give a plug for my pastor, Greg. He is the most amazing pastor I've ever sat under. And he's just so salt of the earth, grounded. Like, guys, and I love Billy Graham's example. When Jimmy Carter had the affair, did the whole thing with Monica Lewinsky, Billy Graham got on a plane and went to D.C. to be with him. Not Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah, Bill Clinton. So when Bill Clinton had that whole affair and everything, he got on a plane. Billy Graham got on a plane and went to him. Reporters met him at the airport and said, why are you going to the president after he's done such an awful thing? And he said one of the most beautiful things ever. And I'm actually saying this because Greg shared this in a sermon recently as an example of how we should be as Christians. He said, Jesus did not call me to judge.
Yeah.
He called us to love. Jesus saves, God judges.
Yeah.
Our job is not to sit here and tell you, you're wrong because you're living this way. You're messed up because you're doing that. You need to turn or burn. That saved and helped no one ever.
Amen.
Ever. Instead, you know what? I don't really care what you're doing right now in your life. What I care about is your heart, your soul, and I want to show you the love of Christ.
Yeah.
How about we just do that? What would happen if Christians only did that?
We could change the world.
Why do we pick on this sin versus that?
Yeah.
I mean, you can take any sin in the book. Let's pick murder. Let's pick like the worst. In God's eyes, is that worse than cheating on your taxes?
Yeah.
So why do we separate sin? Like, this one's worse, and if you're doing this, we don't want you in our church. You don't belong here. And we might say superficially, oh yeah, you're welcome here because we'll love you out of that sin, but it's crap. Why aren't we harping on lies?
I'm going to share something with you off camera once we're done with it.
All right, fair enough.
No, because this is your testimony.
No, that's cool. That's cool. But long story short, that's what caused this crisis of faith for me.
Yeah.
So I knew God was there. I know Jesus saved, but I hated anything to do with Christianity. Didn't want anything to do with church. Never would have.
Hurt.
I was hurt so deeply, so profoundly. And what hurt even more is those people, that pastor, never once even, it never clicked to them how awful what they did was.
But man is going to fail us.
Yeah.
Right? We're all going to fail each other.
Right.
But did you ever think in that moment, okay, but it wasn't God who failed me.
I
It
do
was
this.
those people.
Yes. 100%.
Okay, good.
So I wasn't like, screw you, God, I'm done with you.
Okay.
I was screw you churches. I was like done with churches, done with Christians, done with the backstabbing, hypocrisy and all that. There was just so much bitterness with that.
Sometimes
Never lost my faith. Never lost my faith.
Okay.
But my faith suffered because I was no longer around fellow believers. I didn't want anything to do with them.
So what's God doing with Bob in the days that
Fabulous
follow?
question. Fabulous question. So I had softened my heart again and was at least open to being around Christians again. Obviously, wasn't judgmental, wasn't mad, wasn't bitter anymore. There's always going to be an element of bitterness over that. But after Josh died, talk about words with God. Like, I'm going to back up just a second because I want to share a profound story with you in regards to how God showed me his love is real. He's there, and I got your son.
Oh.
May 2020 was a Wednesday. Thursday, I was wiped out all day. Couldn't get off the couch. You cry so much that your eyes burn the very few seconds you stop crying because they're so dry. Yeah. You can't even get up. You don't want to get up and eat. Don't want to go to the bathroom. Don't want to. You're just so plastered in grief. The next morning, Friday morning, I got up and I'm sitting with my beautiful wife and I said, I have to go. Josh and I used to go hike at Blodgett Peak all the time. And I said, I don't know why, I just got to go. I think Josh is up there. I just have to go. You're not thinking rationally. And sorry if you don't like guns, but I either go up in the mountains with a gun or my dog or both because you don't go without something. Mountain lions are real.
Right. Especially in Colorado.
Especially in Colorado. So I get up there 8 a.m. or so. And I just start walking by myself. No protection, nothing. Just out of my mind with grief. And I remember yelling at God, saying, God, I need to know. First off, the feeling of terror that comes over you when you think to yourself, wow, someone like that just left my life. What if we're tricking ourselves? What if we're just kidding ourselves? Yeah. What if we're making ourselves feel good, telling, oh, there's an afterlife, there's a heaven, how cute, there's a heaven. I'm not going to go float around on a cloud. And all these thoughts flood in like, what if it's crap?
It's honest.
What if it's crap? What if there's nothing? That was the most terrifying thought I've ever had in my life. What if we're just done? What if my beautiful son is just actually gone? Yep. So I'm like, God, I'm having strong words. I'm not cussing, but I'm like, God, I need to know. I need to know you've got my son. I need to know he's not gone. And I walk for another 20 minutes or so. And this is broad daylight. I grew up in these mountains. A mountain lion came out from behind a rock and ran up into the woods. And I stopped. My first instinct was, I'm on the menu for breakfast, maybe, because I'm out there by myself. And he's taking the higher ground. That was my first thought. So a little bit paranoid. I started walking back down, like, I'm going to back up from this situation. There's some other guys coming up. And I told them, hey, there's a cat up there. And I guess we felt bolder together. We all walked up. And then I started to process this. And I just literally told God, I said, I need a sign. And I don't know why it was a weird statement. I said, not some bird on a branch, God. I need something that's like punch in the face. Punch me in the face with something that I can't deny. And no sooner than I finished that prayer, big old cat runs out from behind a rock and runs up into the woods. Cats do not let you see them. Mountain lions.
I was just going to ask you, are you aware of the statistic of how many people will physically see a mountain lion in the state of Colorado?
You're more likely to win the lottery.
Exactly.
It doesn't happen. That was God saying, I've got him. I've got him.
Did you immediately go to that was God answering you?
After I calmed down, when the adrenaline settled, yes, it did. Because I walked up to this high overlook point and I just sat there and I actually did a video and I told the story. And I knew in that moment, my son was okay.
Yeah.
I knew. He was okay. And God came through. He let me know. He let me know in a profound way. I literally asked God to punch me in the face with something I can't deny, and he punched me in the face with a frickin' mountain lion.
He's faithful to answer the way we need it.
And I'm not all into astrology and all this, but my son was a Leo.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
Did your son have any affection towards mountain lions?
I mean, he loved wilderness. He was a wilderness guy. He loved animals, loved the wilderness, loved the forest. That's why he did what he did.
So was your heart, were you kind of starting to exhale a little bit?
On the second day?
You needed that.
I don't know that the word exhale is something I would use, the term I would use.
What were you feeling?
But in that moment, I had clarity that he wasn't gone. I knew he wasn't going to be here in the way I could see him, but I knew with crystal clear clarity that God had him. Mm-hmm. And that did give me at least, I didn't feel that panic anymore. I didn't feel like that. Oh my God, is he really gone? That solved that
Okay,
just like that.
But Bob, you raised him to know who Christ was.
I
You
did.
knew who Christ was.
But I'm telling you, those crises of
you
faith. But when something like that happens, I'm telling you, human nature comes out and you start, oh my God, what if it's all crap?
Yeah.
I don't care how much of a believer you are. Anybody who's honest is going to tell you they've had those moments of faith.
I've been
You
there.
had those moments of faith.
Yeah.
God came through in a way that I can never again. As long as I live, I will never have a crisis of faith. I will never doubt God ever again. We could talk about nuances of religion and best way to practice and best way to God and, what's right, what's wrong, how should we do this or that. But no one will ever rock my belief in God, challenge that belief in God or challenge my faith in God again. It's not possible.
That's good. He needed that.
Yeah. I wish he'd picked another way to solidify that, but
Tell me what's happening with your relationship with your other two sons, your wife, and your ex-wife. Is this a time where you guys are leaning on each other, or
yes.
are you just isolating?
No, Linda was a saint. My kids were awesome. We all came together.
Good.
We came together huge. Yeah, there was no separation. And in fact, I hope you don't mind me telling this, but Liz obviously had a real problem with Linda and I for a long time. And without going into a lot of details, Josh, right before he passed, caused some things to really bring about immense reconciliation. Liz in a million years never would have spoken to Linda. They never had a conversation before Josh died.
Between your ex-wife?
Between my ex-wife and my current wife, yeah. Wow, but Josh did some things, and I won't go into details, but he did some things that were just amazing. And so Liz shared with me some conversations that she had with Josh right before he died that caused Liz to realize, wow, this needs to change. Yeah. And she actually had softened her heart and opened up to, we're not going to be besties, but at least we can be civil and talk and, go to things together and all that. So Josh did that. So I'll tell you what happened right after, because it's so important to paint this picture.
Yeah.
The community came together. This was during COVID. Nothing can happen inside, right? No services or anything. So firefighting community is wow level family. You will not find, I was in the military 20 years. Maybe the police have it, but I think firefighters have it on a level that you can't even touch. The family, the community. My brother-in-law, Wayne Arvizu, I love you, brother, got a hold of every fire department from South Denver to Pueblo, and they rolled their, I think they say the apparatus, whatever they call it, the engines. They had a represented truck from all of the fire departments up and down the Front Range roll at his service. And we had it at the, I was going to say Elks Lodge, the Mason's Lodge over on Fillmore, outside. Perfect day, beautiful weather. Set up tents out there, and we had his memorial service out there. And then at a certain point, and they brought full honors. My son was a complete rookie. They gave him full firefighter honors. The flag, handed the flag to Liz, the bell, the ringing of the bell, the ceremony, the bagpipes, and then all of those trucks rolled with their sirens at low, rolled by. And I'm like, oh my God.
That's awesome.
It was so amazing. Thank you a million times over for all of those firefighters and all of those who supported. There's no way I could ever go back, find each of them and thank them individually. That's the kind of community that firefighters have. And just every time I meet a firefighter right now, if I find out you're a firefighter, I'm going to stop and say, there's just a family there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, God knew you needed that too.
Oh, God, yeah. And the fact of how they came together to honor my son after that was just so next level. It was beautiful. So faith. You wanted to know how the faith journey, right?
Yes.
It was a process, because there's a process of how can you let this happen? God, why did you need him there? I mean, we need him here. Yeah. Don't tell me with all your resources you had to have him there. I'm pretty sure you could have dealt with letting us have him for the rest of his life without that. But this caused some real challenges, and I'm sure Linda won't mind me sharing a little bit. It caused a real rift after a while between us, to the point where, I'm not proud of this, but I got an apartment apart from her for a few months.
From your wife?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I put myself in a position that was awful. And I didn't think there was any way to go back. And I was completely away from my faith. I believe, but only from a knowledge level. God's there, sure, got it.
You were prodigal?
Yeah, huge. And I just remember feeling like I'm done. I'm trapped. I have no way out of this. Sitting in this apartment, all I was doing is drinking and hanging out and being stupid, letting my business crater, letting every part of my life just become destroyed, and didn't care. In fact, I wanted it to be destroyed. You reach this point where you want to be self-destructive, when you want to let things fall apart because you feel like you deserve it. And it's just a terrible pathology, terrible psychology that so many go through. And many don't recover from that. But I just remember hitting rock bottom, sitting in that stupid little apartment. And I just remember one morning just feeling this conviction. And for the first time in years, I slid to my knees. And I turned around and I just put my face on the couch and I said, God, I don't know what to do now. I don't know where to go. I don't know, period. Yeah. I need a miracle.
Yeah.
I was home with my beautiful wife within 24 hours.
Would you say that was your bottom?
That was rock bottom.
Yeah, couldn't get much lower, huh?
Everybody else had almost given up on me. She didn't.
Were you pushing people away?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I was hell bent on destroying every part of my life.
Do you know what the root of that was? Were you ultimately just mad at God, so you pushed away?
I wouldn't say I was mad at God.
What was the root of
I
it?
understood scripture. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. God didn't promise us anything as far as life's going to be great and prim. You're Christian, therefore, poof, you get a great life. No, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So I never really was mad at God. Unless I was on after a couple drinks, maybe I get a little bit wordy with him, but.
What was the root of it then? Just, were you mad at yourself?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think there was a lot of self-anger, some self-hatred, some, oh my God, how can I even want to be here now my son's not here?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I did this to my son. There's some self-blame. You start telling yourself, well, if I had never divorced his mom, would he been on that road going to his mom's out in Calhoun when she would never have lived? You start playing word game. Oh, cycle. Yeah, trust me, it's not healthy. If you're there, don't do it. It's easy to say don't do it, but you're going to do it.
But you got to catch yourself.
Can you catch yourself? Can you catch yourself? You're spiraling. Can you grab a hold of a stick before you go all the way down?
Sounds like God met you in that apartment.
Huge. And it was freakish. Just like the mountain lion, it was like that fast. It was within 24 hours.
Did your heart just shift right away? You felt it? Like, what did you feel?
In that moment, no. I mean, I felt like I needed to call out, and I needed to ask for a miracle. Classic prodigal son story. I'm telling you, everything dropped, and it's like all of a sudden my path home was just there. And Linda was there opening the door for me. And we went to church that day together. Linda, I don't think she'll mind me. I know she won't mind me sharing this. She was never really all about, she grew up Catholic as I did. Didn't like churches for a lot of the reasons we discussed. And I kind of sort of mentioned going to Christian churches, and she was pretty much against that over the years. Going through this, and in that separation period, she turned to God. She started going to church.
Wow. Okay,
and good. That's how we got in touch with Discovery Church. She started going to Sanctuary Church downtown, which is known for outreach towards people with drug addictions and homelessness and all that. They're phenomenal. Another great ministry, and their sister church with ours. She started going, and then I never would have imagined she would be saying, come to church with me Sunday. And I'm like, no, I'm not coming to church with you. You don't even like church. What are you doing going to church? You're just doing that because that's what I want to do. I have these stupid things, right? But every Sunday or every Saturday, she'd be like, hey, I'm going to church tomorrow. I'd love you to come with me. But she wouldn't push. She wouldn't jerk about it. She just laid it out there.
God was doing something in her too. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So throughout this whole thing and going through all that, both of us ended up coming back to the Lord in a huge way. And now we're in an amazing Christian community now, and just real, honest Christians, not the fake dress up for Sunday kind. Nothing against dressing up for Sunday, not judging anybody, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's the wow factor. So God did not kill my son. Doesn't work that way. but he was there to pick up the pieces, and he used that awful tragedy to bring me back.
Yeah.
To bring me back home. I was never out of his hand. Jesus said once I'm in there, I'm not letting go, but I didn't have any kind of a relationship anymore. I was definitely the prodigal son.
Again, if we're honest, I think we've all gone through some pretty big valleys.
Yeah.
And the one question I personally feel like a lot of us go to is why? Do you feel like you have the answer to that, or are you okay not having it?
There is no answer.
Okay.
Because God doesn't create a circumstance to get a result. God uses circumstances in a way that we can't conceive to do things that are nothing short of miraculous. And that's exactly what he did. God didn't say, I don't think Bob's close enough to me. I'm going to kill his son. That way I know he's going to come back to me. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, if scripture says that God knew you before the foundation of the earth.
That's right.
He knew Josh too.
Of course.
So he knew when Josh was going to take his last breath.
Yeah, that's right.
Could God have changed that?
No.
Because he had already decided.
Because it was already there. I mean, I'm a bit of a physics geek too, so I think everything's already there, and God just sees it.
Our plan is written.
It's written. It's already done. I mean, we get into physics. A lot of physicists will tell you that time is static. We move across it. Mm-hmm. Everything that ever has happened or will happen is already there. It's just what point are we at in that? And I think that's how God sees it all. It's already there. He sees the whole thing, because time is not. It's not to him what it is to us. He's not moving through time. He's way outside time.
Sure.
So what happened with Moses and what happened to my son on May 20th, 2020. It's exactly the same to him. It's either still happening, it's still in the same, it's just completely different to him. So would he have changed it? No, because it's already there, it's already set. That's my take.
Okay.
There'd be people who would argue with me, but that's just my understanding of it. So would God have stopped him from dying? No, because he was supposed to go in that moment.
And you rest in knowing where he is.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I rest in knowing where he is now that you've shared what you have.
Yeah.
It's been 4 years. Mm-hmm. How are you today? Where's your heart with all of this today?
Doing really well.
Okay.
Never thought I would say that. Never thought I would say that.
Do you feel guilty for saying that?
No.
Good. You answered that very quickly. I'm happy that you said that.
Yeah. I have no guilt over being well. And it took me a few years to get there. Because, I mean, there was a long period of time where I didn't want to be well, mm-hmm. which is why I tried to sabotage my life. I didn't want to be well. I wanted to be a wreck. Quite frankly, I was never suicidal, but I really would love it if a rock had just fallen on me and I would have died. I wanted to die. I wanted to, but I didn't want to take my own life. I never would have done that. But and this is honest, and there's a lot of people out there would avoid saying that because they don't want to think they're going to put the idea in somebody's head about, oh, you're right, maybe I should give up. And you're not going to put it, going through suicide prevention classes in the military, you can't say something that would cause someone to, oh, that's a great idea, I think I will commit suicide. It doesn't work that way.
Right. No.
But there was a large period of time where I really did not want to be alive. And I did my level best to just destroy my life because I wanted to not be here.
Yeah. I understand that.
But to say that I'm actually way past that now would be an understatement. I'm loving my life again.
You have a lot to offer.
I'm loving my life, and I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm loving who I'm doing it with, the people in my life, my music, the privilege and the opportunity to play with great musicians and play all over the state. Shout out for the Kevin Austin Band. Sorry, shameless plug. We have a lot of fun.
Plug away.
And I just feel like there's a lot of life to live, a lot yet to give. A lot of people who need to be loved on and helped and encouraged. And I just want to be about that. Yeah, business is great. I do love real estate, but I really have to find my way back to serving people who are going through crisis, serving people who are in challenging times in their life. And because I've gone through this and I have a choice. I can either take everything I've gone to and do nothing with it, or I can take everything I've gone through and use it to help others. And I really need to find a way to do that more effectively. used to be with the military before Josh died. I taught classes in transition, helping service members transition from the service to having meaningful and not just careers or not just jobs, but getting their careers and lives on track post-service. I helped design a class that was a 1 week long course. Won't get into that, but that was a very fulfilling part of my life. But I feel like I really want to take that to the next level now. I want to do something that, yes, I want to still work with my fellow veterans, transitioning service members, but I want to expand that. Because I didn't go through this for nothing.
No, you did not.
I feel like I owe it in a very healthy way, a way that's helpful to me, to give that back in a way that's going to help others.
There might be somebody, again, listening to this that just lost somebody. Maybe it's not even a child. Maybe it is a child. Maybe it's their spouse.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that space of grief? I mean, again, you're 4 years out.
I can tell you this. Nobody can tell you when to grieve, how long to grieve. Nobody can fix you, even though they're going to try.
Yeah.
They're going to try to say things. And that's the biggest problem that you're going to have is when people come across someone that's experienced great loss, they have to fix you. They want to say the right thing. And most of the time, the right thing that they think the thing that they think is right is awful. And I've had people say terrible things.
But don't you think we're desperate because we don't know how to help?
Yeah, because we're fixers. That's right.
We want to help.
We want to help. And if you come across someone who's going through a challenging time, it's reflexive in our human nature. We can't just go, oh, that sucks. Sorry for you.
No.
But the only thing, I'm going to give you an example. My niece's husband, best response I ever got. Shout out to you, James. So Jessie, my niece, and James, her husband. James, big burly guy, worked a lumber yard. He now does sales for Fox and Galbraith. He's a phenomenal man. And I just love his reaction because he said nothing to me when he first saw me. 1 week after Josh died, he got out of the car, walked right up to me, put his hands on my shoulders, looked me in the eye, and pulled me in for a hug. Best response.
Really?
Best response. His eyes told me there's not a single thing I can say, but I'm here for you. I love you. That was best response. The next best is, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm here for you. Let me know if you need anything. Don't try to do fixing statements. Don't try to, you need to read this book. Oh, I know someone who just lost their son. You should talk to them. I want to strangle. In that moment, when it's fresh, don't do that. It is the worst thing you can do. You can't be fixed with talking to someone. You can't be fixed with reading a book, listening to a podcast, or going to church.
Yeah.
You need to grieve. That's what I would say to people who are going through that. If it's fresh, it's okay to be a mess. It's okay to be a wreck. Just be okay with not being okay. That's the best piece of advice I can give you. And let no one tell you what you have to do to get through this, especially in those first few months. Be with the grief. Don't be destructive. Don't hurt yourself. Don't start drinking. It's the worst thing you can do. Don't start doing drugs. That's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
You're probably still going to do a little of that, but just be okay with not being okay. And tell the people around you, I need you to let me not be okay right now. That is the biggest takeaway. It is.
Can you imagine having walked through this without having God in your life? Like, do you ever think there's people out there that have gone through this and don't have any faith?
I had a micro taste of that, and it was terrifying. When I had that, that morning when I got up, I had that terrifying thought, what if we're just kidding ourselves? What if there's nothing after life? Nothing. And that moment of terror, thank God came through and solved that one immediately. So I did get a tiny taste of that. And I can't even imagine the emptiness that would go with knowing your loved one is just completely gone, or thinking that they're just gone, there's nothing left.
That's actually what brought me to Christ.
Is that right?
I would think about that thought until it would nauseate me.
Yeah.
And I would lay in bed at night just thinking about it and thinking about this concept of eternity.
Right.
Like, think about it today. Eternity is a long time.
It's like finding the end of the universe.
So you're going to tell me in 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000,000 years, like, my mind can keep going.
Yeah.
That if I choose Christ, I'm eternal.
Yep.
That I'm going to be with him eternity. Like, that would just get my mind.
Forever
I would
and
get
ever,
so
amen.
worked up, Bob. I would get nauseous.
Yeah.
And that's how, again, God spoke to me.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to know But this life is a blank, and
It
it's
is a blank.
temporary, and you're passing through, and I've got something bigger and better.
Amen.
But I'm the only way to get there.
That's right.
And again, God speaks to all of us differently, right? Your relationship is individual with you and God. He
Yep.
made Bob to be different than any other human being.
Very
that ever
different.
walked the earth.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
What else do you want people to know? You've given me a lot. Like, this is great, but I want to make sure,
Yeah.
again, this is not mine. This is yours. I want you to think of all the people right now that are sitting where you were.
So going through this kind of loss is not something you're ever going to be over. The stages of grief had nothing to do with you having close personal loss. Stages of grief had to do with, if you have a terminal diagnosis, you processing your own mortality to the point of acceptance that you're going to die. It is not. So do not let people tell you that you're going to go through the stages of grief after you lose a spouse or a child, for example.
Yeah.
That is not the same. It is not true. You don't ever get over it. What you do is learn to live with it and become healthier living with it day after day. You get to a point where there is life, and in such abundance, after traumatic loss. That can and will be if you self-care. Take the proper steps. Grieve and grieve hard and grieve as long as you need to. Be a mess for as long as you need to, but know that you must come out of it. I like to use the analogy, if you lose a leg, you're never going to jump out of bed and land on 2 feet again.
I like that. That's well said.
Yeah. You lose a loved one like that, you're never going to wake up and feel like you did.
Yeah.
I had 3 beautiful sons. I remember making the statement, wow, how blessed I am. I've got 3 amazing kids. They all have great careers. They all are going to be working for the government. What a blessed man I am to have this. And then that happened 2 weeks later. So after that kind of loss, I'm never going to jump out of bed and think, wow, I've got 3 great sons. I'm going to have to always I'll see a picture of my 3 beautiful boys and know that one of them's not on this earth anymore.
But you still have him.
But I have him. And I know he's there. So you will get to the point where you can walk without that leg.
Yeah.
You can live with that loss. But you will live with the loss. You're not going to live like it never happened. And I think people really do themselves a disservice when they try to believe they can get to a point where as if the loss never happened. That's a fallacy. You can't expect that. If you accept the fact that you're always going to have that loss, it's going to be a part of who you are from now on. Like the missing leg.
Yeah.
Accept that. And now how can you live? We look at paraplegics who have amazing athletic lives. They're climbing. I had a good friend of mine who had a lady, I can't remember, a good friend of mine named Anna. She had a good friend of her who didn't have any legs, lost her legs. And she climbed all the way up.
No legs?
No legs. She used just her arms and climbed all the way up a Manitou incline. It was all over the news. It was a big thing.
Wow.
So she learned to live and learned to be athletic and learned to live large and full with no legs. So you lose something like that, you've lost something very significant. Don't pretend like you have it,
Okay.
but learn to live well with it. And you will get to that point. It doesn't seem like you will. That first year, 2 years, maybe 3 years even, it doesn't seem like you will. You can't even conceptualize being well again. But you will be well unless you're determined not to be. And that's an important statement. Unless you're determined not to be.
That's very important.
And I'm going to warn you, there are some sites out there, websites and books that will encourage you to stay in the deep grief for the rest of your life. Don't swim in that pond. Don't swim in that pond. It's okay. Go to some of those places because you need to grieve hard and you need to grieve with others early on. But I know people personally who it's been 10 years, 15 years, and it's like it just happened. Because their entire persona and everything about their lives is about that loss. And that is now their identity.
Yeah.
They have to be the person that lost their child and, oh my God, you have to know how devastated I am. I'm not judging you if that's you, but please know you can get to a place and your loved ones are looking down and they're your cheerleaders. They want you to live hard and loud and large and fun. They want you to have joy. I think I'm doing my son a disservice if I don't do that.
What do you think he'd say if he was here today?
I think he'd say, I love you, Dad. I'm actually proud of you, dude. I think he would be at some level proud because I'm doing the best I can. I'm far from perfect, but
yeah,
I think all things considered, I'm doing okay.
If you enjoyed this episode of Gritty Glory, I'd be grateful for you to subscribe, like, and share so we can get this out to as many people who need to hear it.